My guest this morning is Kisha A. Brown, Esquire, a civil rights lawyer, advisor, speaker, and proud mom. And she is the founder and CEO of Justis, that's Justis, play on words, Justice Connection, the nation's first Black attorney referral network. Recognized as the 2023 Justice Champion by the Maryland State Bar Association and the Daily Record, she has also been named one of the most influential women in legal tech. Rooted in a legacy of Black resilience and advocacy, she is committed to empowering communities by bridging the gap between legal access and justice. She's the former director of the Baltimore City Civil Rights Department, overseeing the Wage Commission, which enforced the minimum, prevailing, and living wage laws, the Community Relations Commission, the local EEOC, which also enforced the ban the box law, and the Civilian Review Board, the only independent agency authorized to investigate police misconduct. Kisha authored several Maryland laws as the Director of Legislative Affairs for the Maryland Office of the Attorney General. In 2013, Kisha was asked to serve as the Director of Civil Rights, where she created the office's first civil rights webpage, led statewide voting rights sessions, and conducted research on persistent civil rights trends. In addition, she formulated and administered the office's first paid law clerkship program named after the great, our fraternity brother, Thurgood Marshall. She also co-authored the office's 2014 report on sexual misconduct at Maryland's colleges and universities. She started off as a litigator and policy advocate at the Baltimore Legal Aid Bureau. As an active member of her community, she is board secretary for the National Children's Center, a senior advisor of Law Links, a legal tech startup, and the immediate past vice chair for the Copen State University Foundation Board. Ms. Brown has served on numerous boards and committees that have allowed her to devote her time to social justice, such as PGCSIF and KIPP Baltimore, KIP Baltimore, Job Opportunities Task Force, Vehicles for Change, and the Community Law Center. She is also a past president of the Alliance of Black Women Attorneys of Maryland. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Reading Circle microphones, Kisha A. Brown, Esquire. Attorney Brown, good morning.
Hello. Good morning. How are you?
I am doing well, thank you. How are you?
I am well. I'm glad to be up and at it and with you. So
I know that's right. Well, as I was saying, I do not work off a question list. However, the first question I do ask, though, is kind of like, how did we get to where we are? Is this something as a child? Did you always say, I'm going to be an attorney? Or is this something that came later in life? Or did something happen that said, you know what, I'm going to be an attorney because I want to address that? Kind of like talk to us a little bit about where did it all begin?
Yeah, I think it's a combo of two aspects. One, what was born in me and the type of person that I naturally am, and also the intentionality of those around me, right? So I just remember as a young kid, I was like, I remember when the Million Man March went on, and I was living in Georgia, and so couldn't be up here in the North where it was happening in D.C., and I just took notes, right? Like, I just remember being at the TV, listening to Farrakhan, and taking notes. Like, I got to remember this. I've got to learn from this, and always felt as my role, whether it was in my second grade class or beyond, that I wanted to be an advocate for others, wanted to support. And, coming from a West Indian background as well, my parents and other family members always would say, oh, you'd make a good lawyer. You should be a lawyer. And, Jamaicans are fussy by nature sometimes. And so we just, I didn't want to go to law school because people thought I could hold a good argument, but it was something that I wanted to do. And so I took some time between law school, but it was something that I always sort of had in my mind and was encouraged very early on to pursue. And then for me, it was like, all right, I want to know the laws behind what the system is operating off of, right? Because if I can help change the system, then that changes the outcome for my people. I think that's how I looked at it early on.
Interesting. You were talking about the Million Man March. I was actually at the Million Man March. I was actually there. I still have a sweatshirt from it, by the way. Right. I still have a sweatshirt. This is the Million Man March. I was actually there that entire day. And while folks thought, because it was a congregation of African-American males, that it was going to be violence, there was not one bit of violence that day.
Right.
And so it was an interesting day. I can remember, and this has been years ago, but I still remember it well. So now I just heard you say West Indian, Caribbean, Jamaicans. Were you born in Jamaica or were you born here?
No, I was first born generation here in New York, in Queens. And then on my mother's side, she's Bayesian. And I'm second generation born American on that side. Okay,
because I am extremely familiar with the Jamaican culture for a lot of different reasons, but extremely familiar with it. And yes, I'm very familiar in terms of kind of like the drive and you know, everything that goes along with that. So I could see when you were saying about, you know, people saying you would be a good lawyer and so forth. And so I can actually see how that would come about. So now talk a little bit about, because now not only were you becoming a lawyer, but you were becoming a Black or an African-American or Jamaican woman attorney. What kind of like went along with becoming that? Were there any struggles or were there challenges, or was it, you know, like anybody else?
You know, it's like anybody else who's a Black woman, right? In the sense that the same challenges that Black women face in various careers, whether you, quite frankly, are a cashier or you're trying to get a master's degree, there's a familial strain of experience that we all have. You know, it's why we speak the same language as a people, because of the experience we have in this country. And so, you know, there have been definite times where, because I was a Black woman, I was undervalued or underestimated, or not given the same type of opportunity. And, you know, you sort of navigate life knowing these occur and persisting, right? Nevertheless, she persists. And it's also finding camaraderie with other Black people has always been the secret sauce, or the special sauce, I should say. It's not a secret. But having camaraderie and community with other Black people and not being in isolation, I think was always key.
You know, and this is walking up to our discussion on DEI and social justice and civil rights and so forth and so on, because you're absolutely right. And that's the reason I asked the question, because first, I can remember my undergraduate degree was in business administration. And at the same university that I'm sitting behind it at right now, during that time frame, there were very few Black people that were going through that particular major. And you're absolutely right. One of my best friends to this day came about because it was three of us in a class. It was a female, a Black female, and two Black males. So the two of us said, well, you know, we tried to get her in as well, but she had nothing to do with us. But the two of us became best friends. And it became from that whole notion of exactly what you just said, the camaraderie of having somebody else. Because there was very few, most of my classes, I would be the only African American in the class. And as I went through my master's program, you know, it got a little bit better by the time I got to my second master's program. And now I'm in the doctoral study. I was the only African-American male in my program. So I know exactly what I came out of corporate America before I went into education. And in many instances, I was the only African-American in the group. And, you know, there's a lot that goes on that's spoken and a lot that goes on that's unspoken. I remember very clearly one of the groups I was in corporate America, as it shook out, that particular group wound up being all African American. Like it was an anomaly. It was like the district was all African American. That particular district, that particular year, all of us exceeded our goals. And so we were all in our evaluations far exceeds. That group was disbanded right after that. They disbanded the group. I was like, oh, wow. Wait. It was a Black district manager. I was a beeline manager. We had other beeline managers, this, that, and the other in there. And surpassed our goals. And right after that, the group was disbanded. So there are things like that. And people don't believe when you start talking some of the things, and this is where we're going into the civil rights and the DEI and the social justice. A lot of people really don't believe some of these things. When you start talking privilege and they don't believe some of these things be going on. They just think people of color or black people or whoever are just whining and complaining, when the truth of the matter is, no, these are things that are going on. Now, a part of my doctoral, it's a combination of education leadership, and social justice. So I'm really gonna have a good time talking to you this morning, because part of the degree is social justice. We have to incorporate social justice into the ed leadership piece. And I've been in situations where we've been in sessions and we're talking about things that we've experienced, and people are looking at us like in disbelief. Let's talk a little bit about, like, in terms of, one, why did you pick civil rights? And let's talk a little bit about what civil rights are. Because as I said before we came on the air, some of these things, I think we use the terms loosely, or we, use the terms interchangeably. And I don't, maybe some folks need a better understanding of what these terms actually mean.
Yeah, I think that we're in an age now, right, where all of the things that you mentioned are demonized, have become demonized even more so, especially DEI, right? And what does DEI stand for? As a throwback, right, DEI originally was diversity, equity, and inclusion, right, and was sort of that catchphrase that was created, if you will, or morphed to really capture not necessarily civil rights, but necessarily like workplace development, right? And making sure that your workforce reflected either your customer base or more in line with the demographics of your region and your community, and quite frankly, corporate norms or corporate goals, or not even corporate, but also nonprofit and public as well goals. And having everything be demonized shifts the narrative, but nevertheless, I think that those folks who are saying, what is this, Black people are whining, I think they know, right? Like,
Right.
I don't think they know in their deepest of hearts, like, I got to hold on to what I got, because the only reason I got it like this is because I'm a part of a system that routinely subjugates and oppresses other people, right? And I don't think anybody articulates it, or there are people who do, obviously, but I don't think there are the masses, and very, quite frankly, white people, right, who articulate it at the dinner table, but that they know that we can't say we all started, and everybody knows we didn't start at the same footing, and as a result, you have the outcome that you have, and that we have always fought for, and all gains have been because we have fought for, right, advancements and our rights, and they have benefited everyone, right, because that's the type of people that we are.
That is correct. And see again, because even going back into civil rights, because like I am a fan of the 60s because of the civil rights movement. I just think the 60s is a fascinating decade. Just everything that went on in there between John F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King getting assassinated, and RFK getting assassinated, and Malcolm X getting assassinated, and everybody was fighting because we, just like you said, we wanted equal rights. So let's talk a little bit about like civil rights, that fight in the 60s, and where we are now in 2025.
Mm-hmm. And talk about what the distance we've come and how far we got to go.
Yes. Yes.
Indeed. I have been reflecting since the passing of our dear sister, Assata Shakur, right?
Yes.
She's someone that I just felt a kinship with ever since I learned about her and read her book and followed her different writings and speakings, and I named my daughter after her as well, right? That's how much I
all right.
believe in her legacy. And I was looking for her her biography on my bookshelf, and I ran across Ron Dellum's book, Laying Down with Lions, I think it's called. And so I picked up this book by Ron Dellums, which I'm sure you're familiar with Ron. He was during that 60s,
I am.
70s era, right? And he was mayor of Oakland and did so much on the California side.
Correct.
Also with the Black Caucus and with South Africa. I flipped through the book and I came to this passage, and I won't read it because I don't even have it in front of me, but he reflected on Martin Luther King and sort of laying down your life, if you will, and devoting your life to democracy, and that you are really not about the outcome, but about the income. But about the impact. That's what you have control over more, right? And I thought about how, we are in a society where we want to see things like change very quickly, and it never has. But everything that we do, each one of us in this moment makes impact, right? But we got to do something. We can't just wait. I know we just came out of the gospel hour and we're still feeling the Spirit and always feeling the Spirit, right? But the Spirit calls us to move. Right?
That is correct.
We have to be a part of our greatest experience of freedom.
That is correct.
Our own willingness to take responsibility for all of it. And so, I think that movement, that time period in the 60s and 70s, were an important part of how we, in a blueprint on how we came together once again in a new modern era to effectuate change. And it's amazing how we can look back and now read about that has been brought to light about all the undercover government operatives,
correct,
right, and programs that were simultaneously going on to once again oppress and subjugate.
Correct.
Right? And so it only behooves us. That's why, Mark, as you know, we got to know what we've been through.
Correct.
Because then we're able to say, they've been, as a government, right, trying to collectively, using our own taxpayer dollars against us.
Correct.
To try and bury us. And then, you have the wonderful quote that says they tried to bury us, but they didn't know we were seeds, right? And we keep coming.
That is correct. And you're right in terms of COINTELPRO and all kinds of programs, the folks that were planted within the organizations. And again, one of the things for me, like I said, I'm fascinated with during the 60s and the 70s or what have you, was when it said civil rights movement to me, and I'm a wordsmith, I'm big on words. The key word to me was movement.
That's
that
right.
We actually came together and did something. This is what kind of like, I was like, because that's what's going to have to happen. Again, we're going to have a collective movement. And, we had different ideologies, but at the end of the day, they wanted the same goal. And so we are going to have to, and it's interesting you were talking about it because this is, at the end of the day, we can have all the spirit we want, but the truth of the matter is even the Bible says faith without works is dead. That you have to have not only just the prayer and the faith and all that, you got to put the work in also. You got to put the work in behind it. So the two go hand in hand. But that's the thing is like, are we, because as you talk civil rights and social justice, what are you seeing in terms of a civil rights attorney in terms of us coming together, or do we come together, or what does the civil rights landscape look like?
Ooh, that is a powerful question. And I think I see civil rights, broader, I see justice in everything. That's like my personal lens, right? Like when I think about the awful Black maternal health numbers, that's a justice issue, right? When we talk about the school to prison pipeline, that's a justice issue.
Correct.
When we talk about lead paint and lead poisoning of our children and the deplorable housing, that's a justice issue, right? Like, so it interweaves itself in everything. When you have to deal with all those microaggressions on a job that affect your pay and your health, that's a justice issue, right? And so sometimes we don't even, I think we're so used to navigating this world and trying to get through and get by, which is understandable, that we don't see the justice issues that we terrain every day. And so sometimes we think about it as this big lofty thing that somebody else is going to fight for, when it really is personal, right, as well as universal. And if we don't handle the personal aspect, the part that is right in front of us, the part that we are actually walking on, then that allows injustice to fester, right, and to grow and to remain strong, because if nothing happens after injustice, it emboldens, right, the folks who are oppressing. And so I think about, I get calls and emails all the time as it relates, or when I'm giving presentations around people's experiences and Black people's experience, to be particular, to be specific. And we feel it every which way, right? And so civil rights, when we think about what's the issue is we live in it, right? We are living it in every regard. It's down to not only when our Black kids are going to Sesame Street and being turned away, right? That we say that, and we say that's a social injustice, right? And somebody needs to make them pay. Yes, the same thing is happening on your job when you're being paid less by the person than the white man, right, who got hired after you, who's in a position lower than you, right? Those are also injustices that deserve correcting. And so we as a people also, I'm not saying that the law is perfect, and I'm not even saying the law is always good and right, but we also need to be able to proactively avail ourselves of the law. And that's one of the aspects that I really lean into, Mark, is us being able to not, sit back and just take it on the chin and try to DIY, do it ourselves and fix it, but that we avail ourselves of the full legal system to get what's ours and to hold the system accountable. And there are many ways that we can do that. And I think that one of the biggest disservices, and I know that you probably reflect on this as well, is how, they made us believe that civil rights movement was Martin and Malcolm.
Right.
That it was Rosa and a couple of other folks. And sometimes we talk about Fannie Lou Hamer if we're really being, expansive.
Right.
But that's it. Right. Those are our people. And then they killed him and the whole movement died, and now we've been struggling ever since. Right? And it's like there are thousands of unnamed folks who are grandparents now, right? Who did their part. There are regular folks who are still in prison who did their part, right? Who didn't escape like Assata, but are still doing prison time for the work that they did during civil rights that nobody knows their name. So this isn't about like, hey, I don't have what it takes to like sort of rise to the top. We don't need everybody to rise to the top. That was never our plan and never our solution, right? It's about all of us stepping forward where we are to do our part and to be in community when we do that, so that we're stronger together.
And you know what? I'm glad you brought up justice, because that was another one of the terms I wanted defined. Was what is, because everyone, no justice, no peace. I mean, we hear the term bandied about all of the time. So as you see it, and like you said, because that's your area, like how are you, or for my listening audience, when you start saying justice, and some of those things you just talked about in terms of getting in the game, talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think, my perspective, as I shared, is that justice is very personal and that it is universal, right? And that we talk about justice as, the legal system, but I also want us to consider, like, what is just? I sort of name my company off of that. Just is.
Correct. ...
right? What is just? What does justice look like? Does justice look like, good water that you don't have to bottle up and pay for and ship to your house because it's too expensive? What does justice look like for us in our communities as a people, and being able to imagine and to be able to call it a thing that we then pursue, that we then claim, that we walk in. And so I think that for me, justice looks like not only holding the law accountable, but also shaping the law to be what we want it to be, right? One of my favorite quotes or theories from James Baldwin is, the law is meant to be my servant and not my master.
Correct.
Right? And I think we look at the law as a master, right? I'm trying not to speed over 30 miles per hour so I don't get, one of them new photo enforced speeding tickets, right? It's overseeing me all the time. It's this master that I'm trying to avoid, when in turn it is supposed to serve us, to protect us, to promote social goods. And if we are not actively saying, this is what I want the laws in my community to look like, somebody else for sure is devising the plan for you.
And see, that's why it is so important. Going back to movement, going back to getting in the game, going back to for a lot of our folks, and again, I don't. You were out of the Baltimore area, so when I say urban area, I'm up in the Patterson area. But for a lot of our folks, we won't even get out and vote.
Yeah, it's funny. I was thinking about. Do you remember? All right, so I'm sure you watched. Remember Dave Chappelle's show?
I do.
We had, right. So he had this skit on there that I never forgot, and I just think it resonates. It was like the Black game show, and he had I think one of the persons was a New York or New Jersey white female police officer, and then one of the guys was Ashley Larry. Well, he wasn't playing Ashley Larry, but he was the same guy, and then there were a couple of other folks. I think Charlie Murphy might have been there, and so forth. And the question that he asked was, how are we as a people going to get over? How are we going to make it over? Right? And somebody's answer was, are we? And he was like, that's correct, right? Like back to the question, are we going to make it over? And I remember the white cop said, voting. And he goes, wrong, right? And everybody laughed because it was the sort of, the inside joke that, hey, that ain't work for us, or voting's a joke, or whatever have you. But I think that premise still lives, right? It's still prevalent. But I do want to give credit to us as Black people, because it is Black people who still have the strongest block. So it ain't like it's us that's not doing our part.
Correct.
Time. We get on to us and be like, oh, I know 4 Black men who didn't vote. You're all the reason Kamala didn't win. No, right? That's not. We may say that, but that's not it, and we know it, right? It is. We're in a country where the grandchildren, and the great-grandchildren of slave masters, right? Of overseers, of poor white folks, of folks who ran out to Oklahoma to get there first, to take native land. These are the people we're dealing with.
Correct.
Right? And so some have grown up and evolved, right, and recognized the humanity of other people besides white people, and some, let's be honest, have not.
Correct.
Right? And so we are dealing with this mixed bag, and I think that really shows itself when it's time to vote, especially we see it on national levels. But as you and I know, that it is really local politics that run how you experience life. And
Correct.
I'll tell you, in my former life, right, I was legislative affairs director for the Maryland Attorney General in my last legislative role. And, this is basically you're behind the scenes seeing the sausage be made. And I'm seeing it, quite frankly, from one of the best vantage points, because you can't pass a law in a state without the Attorney General's office saying, yes, this is a good one, right? So everybody wanted to hear what the opinion was or the feedback I had on any particular bill. And so there was an opportunity that I had where I co-authored some bills that dealt specifically with civil rights. And I'll tell you, nobody's paying attention because nobody knew I co-authored them or that they passed, right? Because nobody's paying attention most of the time. Legislators will tell you, if 2 or more people from my district come and say they have an issue with something, it now becomes an issue for me to deal with. That's how little we actually engage with the people who we either elected or were elected in our absence of paying attention to them or didn't even vote for them, right? And so this is where the laws that govern us actually we do have some ownership of, and that we can change. The biggest issue for most of us is that we work all day. Nobody got time to be
Right.
tracking what they doing in the legislature and is going back and forth and calling your representative and telling them something. You got to email, right? Like, we don't have time for that. That's why lobbyists are so integral, if you will, to the equation. Now, everybody's got a lobbyist, so I'm not just talking about corporations, right? Because those people are paid to pay attention.
Correct.
And so whether it's a black chamber who needs black business owners to be a part of it so that they can have someone down there who's representing black businesses, this is where our collectivity matters. Because if we're like, I don't want to join the black chamber and they're not doing nothing, or I don't go to no meetings, yeah. But if you want to make sure that they don't pass laws that screw you as a black business owner, you got to have somebody down there who's like saying that. And a black chamber representative is going to have clout because they're going to say, I'm coming and I'm representing all these businesses. But if we can't have anybody down there, then there is no voice. And our black representatives work overtime, I think, to try and be representatives of all black people, if you will. I'm stretching a bit. But they need to have the community back them. It's not enough for them to say it. Nothing counts more than community people coming and voicing their opinion.
Wow, listening audience, I hope you've been with me since 6 o'clock. However, I definitely hope you've been with me since 7 o'clock, because my guest this morning is Kisha A. Brown, Esquire, and we're talking a lot of legal issues, particularly around civil rights, the law, DEI, justice, social justice. We're talking all these because these, that's what we're dealing with now. That's the battle again. I don't know if the battle ever went away. Maybe it subsided a little bit, but it is really back at the forefront again with everything that's going on. And we were just talking about, how can you do your part? How can each of us do our part in terms of change? In terms of impacting, especially with things that's going on that impact us that are negative. I mean, you were talking about like the lead in the water. I mean, there are so many issues that people don't realize that are impacting our lives, and it's not the same in every community.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, just to reflect even just on that point that you made about the lead in our water, that may not seem like a big deal, but every child, if anybody got toddler, you got to get your kid tested for lead regardless of where you live, right? Because it's such an issue, and it impacts us as black people disproportionately. And I'll tell you, one of the things when I was working in the legislature as a lobbyist is the paint manufacturers haven't forgotten that they screwed everybody with that paint back in the day. So they're still trying to pass laws that close the window of their liability, right? And so this is what makes it hard for us oftentimes, because we're navigating every day. And I acknowledge that, right? We are navigating every day the best we can. Like, the person you're like, ooh, I wish she'd get her thing together. She's doing the best she can, most likely.
Right.
And so, yeah.
You brought up something, when you said disproportionate, because see, therein lies the issue that regardless of what it is, African Americans, people of color, Latinos, we get the short end of the stick. And that is systemic. That is by design. That is intentional. It's just that at this point, it's just kind of like in your face. But it's always been there. And we are, because when you look at any statistic, the negative numbers are always, whether it's incarceration, whether it's children in special ed, whether it's suspension rates in school, whether it's whatever various diseases, whether it's high blood pressure, whether it's diabetes, whether it's whatever the stat is that is the lowest, we got it. Disproportionately so.
Yeah, and it's the question around like holding folks accountable. I mean, that's what the legal system, right, is its role, is to hold folks accountable. And so we can't ever let up on that. And I don't think the struggle has to be a struggle, right? Where we feel the negative effects of it. We live it, but I think we also do an incredible, which amazes the entire world, right? Like, we do an incredible job of sourcing joy for ourselves as well. And so there's a balance, right, between brunching on Saturday all day, right, and what is the work that I'm doing to better, to empower, to advance my people. And that's the intentionality that I think that civil rights movement that we had in the 60s and 70s, because we've had these movements. We've had different, we maybe not named them the same way, right, along our existence in this country. But we've always been moving. And I think we're in a period of time now where we have more distractions than ever before, right? So all throughout our existence, it was us. And us was all we had.
Right.
Now we're at a time place where we got 24-hour TV, streaming, social media, fake news is super huge, more than I think we give credit for. And all of these distractions, right? Like selling, right? We are constantly bombarded with images and information, even if you don't have cable, right? Even if you're not watching TV, you can't get around it. And so it is a different way that we have to have intentionality around social justice and our movement to advance our people. And I think a part of that includes leveraging technology in new ways. This is what is before us, and it makes sense for us to leverage it and to think anew on how and when we come together as a collective, because that's when we're at our strongest. And they know that. That's why they go to Black churches every election season.
Correct.
Right? Because they know when in our collective we can do things. We do things all the time. We got to reimagine what that looks like, right? And I know Black churches are having that conversation. I know our Black civic organizations are having that conversation. I know that Black Girl meets in coffee shops, right? Like we're having these conversations, which is important, and it doesn't require a degree to have a conversation about this, right? It doesn't require a title to be able to be thoughtful and to be active about our own community advancement. But it really does take intentionality for us to do it. And I see that in my work, Mark, in growing Justice Connection, the Black Lawyer Directory, that you got to be intentional. It ain't easy to find a Black lawyer. I know, because I'm building the directory. We're moving this ship and building it at the same time, and I recognize how challenging it is, which is why we've got to have this one-stop shop for us as a people. But we got to use these things that we know that Black people are building, and we got to support them, right? Because there is a ridiculous, I can't even, more than $200 billion, and I'm underestimating. It's actually closer to like 300, right, in venture capital money that goes out, mainly 99%, and I'm not exaggerating when I say 99%, to white men, right, for their ideas.
Correct.
See if they're going to work or not. That's how you get an Uber. That's how you get, all of these different companies. Literally, it's the huge amounts of money that are thrown at white businesses for them to see if they're going to make it or not. Most of them don't, because that's the nature of business. But Black businesses, everything from a Black legal tech startup that is Justice Connection to a mom and pop grocery store, is usually bootstrapping, right? They're usually taking their own money and pouring it in, and people may say that's what business is about, but it's actually not. Right? You need money to make money.
Correct.
And when businesses don't have money to kind of push them off in the beginning, it makes it 10 times harder for them to survive and to scale. And it's why our intentionality around supporting Black businesses is so critical to the movement.
I could not agree with you more. Now, that's one thing I have always done. That's where I always go first. And because, my medical team right now, they was all African-American until my dentist, she moved and she transferred her practice. But my my optometrist, my general physician, my dentist at the time. I mean, when my kids were little, now you were talking like it was the same thing. We were looking for an African-American pediatrician. I mean, all of these various lines, because that's where it's not a matter, I tell people I am not anti-white, because what we're talking about is not a matter of hating white people. That's not what we're talking about. But we are talking about supporting and loving ourselves and our own, because at the end of the day, that's what they do. They love and support their own. So there is no reason why we cannot love and support our own. So I'm always, and it's interesting because I've needed attorneys a couple of times, and I've done the same thing. Like, okay, I would like to have an African American attorney represent me, and so it was like you said, it was a time. Matter of fact, I don't think I found one, and not in my area. I had found, and I don't know if you know her now. I got to think of her name because she was on my show a few years ago. She's out in New York, and I wanted to use her from a family law perspective, and either her caseload was full or she didn't. I forget what it was, but she was one I had found I wanted to use. But it is a battle. It really is, in order to try to find. It's not that they don't exist. And then the issue comes up, like you said, are we willing to support? Are we willing to be intentional? Because I am very intentional when it comes to that. When it comes to Black business, I'm very intentional about that. In terms of keeping our businesses going, because it's a two-way street with Black business. On the one hand, you get the business owner, like you said, they're bootstrapping. So a lot of times their costs might have to be, or their prices might have to be a little bit higher because they're bootstrapping. Then you get the supporter that will say, come on, bro, give me a break because I look like you.
Yeah, I mean, and I love the hookup as much as the next one.
Right.
Like, I was raised in a way where it was like you got a discount and you were winning, right? Even now, if I get a discount, a good discount, I'll call my mama and be like, guess how much I paid for that, right? So I get it. We love a good hookup, and we live off of that. And quite frankly, it's part of our legacy, because when, segregation was still going on, we were, quote unquote, hooked up because we had to go to the back of the room.
Correct.
Right? And it was the Black chef who was like, I'm hooking up all the Black people who come, and this is where they have to go and, get their food in the back. And so, but I love, how listening to you share about your own experience, because it is exactly the case, right? That sometimes our prices seem higher because we're not subsidized, right?
Correct.
Investor money that is artificially keeping the price low, or our hours are inconsistent. And we all been to a Jamaican restaurant, and you love their fried fish, and you show up and, why are y'all not open at Friday at 3 p.m.? Y'all don't want money, right? Like, but TT is sick, and they don't have a backup TT, because you don't have a backup TT when you can barely afford TT, right? And so we get upset, and we like, this is why we can't have nice things, right? But in effect, it is hard. It is hard. I'm a part of a number of different groups, and so one of the groups of Black women, and it's we texting all day. Shout out to my Black women groups, business owner groups, and the struggle is real. So these women are writers, consultants. They're candle makers. They do all the things. But, there are times where in the chat they may say, does anybody know of anybody who's hiring? Because I got to supplement my money, my revenue, my income that I need to survive, because I'm not making enough in my business.
Correct.
Right? And so there's all of the trappings of being a business owner that are really hard, just really hard, because you're good at making food or baking or building technology, but that doesn't mean that you're good at accounting and marketing and sales, right?
Correct.
And so all of that comes with it, and all of that comes with a price tag, and nobody's paying for that, right? Every time I come out and do things with Justice Connection, the lawyers aren't paying for that. They're paying for someone to find them, so that they can then be hired and provide those legal services. And so it is hard. Right?
No, it is. As a matter of fact, now, are you doing the network by state? Because again, like each state, people have, when they pass the, you were a lawyer, so when you pass the bar, you're licensed by state or whatever. Yeah. Is the network, if I'm looking for an African-American attorney in New Jersey, would I be able to go to that network and just find New Jersey attorneys?
Yeah, so if you are a New Jersey attorney and you're listening here, then I want you to come to the website and go to the Contact Us page and holler at your girl, because we need you, right? And I'm going to be very frank with all the black lawyers who's listening. No one can find you. No one.
Listen, I'm talking personal experience. Let me see. I've needed attorneys, of course, when purchasing houses. I needed attorneys with divorces. I've needed attorneys with in each individual. I think one time I bought my first house. Matter of fact, I know it was when I bought my first house. I had an African American attorney that handled the closing and all that kind of stuff. But ever since then, it didn't necessarily work out that way. But you're right. That extremely hard to find. So yeah, a network like that would be extremely useful.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. It is, and it is very hard to find, and it's not because they're not great lawyers.
Correct.
That is often the interpretation. Oh, they small because they must not be a good lawyer. No, they're small because they don't necessarily want to work at a large law firm. You have way more control if you own your own practice, which is not hard to do. But that does not make them a marketing and advertising guru, right? And as black lawyers, we are only 5% of all lawyers.
Correct.
Right? So you got to go through 9 to 5 non-black lawyers to get to one of us. And how many of y'all listening, come on, let's be real, are going to go through 9 to 5 to find the one?
Correct.
And that is the definition, if you will, of the civil rights movement. Maybe that's what it is. Folks were willing to go through the 9 to 5 to get to the one.
Correct.
Right? They were willing to not ride the bus and carpool for years.
Right.
Right? To get to the other side. And that is the intentionality that we say, okay, is everybody doing it? No, is you doing it? Right?
That's right.
Are you going through the 9 to 5 or going to a Justice Connection website? If anybody wants to be like, what can I do right now? Go to justisconnection.com. That's the Justice Connection website. Open the website and browse it for 1 minute. That's it. That's all I need you to do, right? Because that is the type of, we live in a digital world.
Correct.
Right? And so if you don't go to black-owned business websites and stay for longer than 30 seconds, Google's like, meh, nobody comes here. And it suppresses the website. Right? That's not
That's
me
correct.
as a lawyer. That's me as a businesswoman having to learn how to make a website for black people to find lawyers visible. Right? And so without having $1 million budget.
Right.
Because everybody knows Morgan & Morgan.
Right.
Right? Morgan & Morgan spends $150 million a year on marketing and advertising. Right? There's not a black lawyer. There's not every black lawyer in this country pooling their resources to match that. Right? So it is hard intentionally for you to find us, which is why we've got to be this is why I was like, hey, we need to have a one-stop shop. This isn't rocket science, but it is hard, right, to build anything from scratch.
Say this, because when we get to the end of your interview, I'm going to give you the opportunity to promote again. But I say the site again because I'm getting ready to log onto it right here in the studio.
Hey.
So
it's JUS
TIS
connection.com.
Connection.com.
Yeah. Look around, and if you say, I need a lawyer.
Oh, I see. Justice
and you're
Connection.
in New Jersey, and I don't have someone, I will help you go find one. Right? Mm-hmm. That's also like, as I'm building this, part of what I'm doing, right, is tapping into my network of network.
Right.
And that's also one way that we're building. But this season, November and December, we're doing a really big push to a lot of bar associations and other collective organizations that where lawyers are, to really build up. But it's incredible, Mark, I'll tell you, because, I didn't go to law school like, I'm going to build a directory of black lawyers around the country, right? Like, I didn't ever envision this part of my journey, but it has been one of the hardest parts, right? Because it requires me to stretch in ways that are beyond just the lawyering part. It is the marketing and advertising and the accounting and the websites and all that stuff that I have to become proficient at in order to build this legal ecosystem, because that's what we need. Right?
No, you're absolutely right. Because I'm on here. I'm looking at it. Justice Connection, the Black Lawyer Direct. Welcome to the number one source for top black lawyers. You're in the right place for the best black lawyer near you. Welcome to Justice Connection, the nation's premier black lawyer directory, connecting you to the best black attorneys near you for people who are seeking compassionate, culturally competent legal counsel to grow their business and protect their families. Justice Connection offers top-tier vetted black attorneys who understand you and are dedicated to your success. And then he goes into it. So, I encourage you listening audience, and again, in the promo time, whenever she gets new, when at the end, we're going to do this again, but it's JUSTISCONNECTION, just justiceconnection.com. And I see you have a YouTube video of yourself in here and everything. Why you need to lawyer up. So yes, listening audience again, and we'll put it out there, but again, it's justiceconnection.com. And see, the other piece of that is if, we can't depend on other folks to do for us what we ought to be doing or can do for ourselves.
Yeah, that's right. If we're waiting for the American Bar Association, which is definitely on the front lines fighting our current administration, but if we're waiting for them to create a directory of black lawyers, we still be waiting.
Yeah, it's
right?
not going to happen.
No, it's not going to happen. And most of our black bar associations, not most, all of them are volunteer-led, right? So everybody's got their full-time job, and they volunteer in their bar associations, which do a lot of networking, community service, but not like, hey, I'm going to build a directory for all of the lawyers in private practice. That's a whole nother level. And so it really did take someone who I think was dedicated to black people and black lawyers to say, hey, we need to build this. And I'm proud to be not only focused on building the black lawyer directory, but also, that's phase one, right? You got to build in phases. And the next phase after the black lawyer directory is really around leveraging technology to make access to justice for black people much more palpable and much more price-friendly as well. That's the movement that we've got to continue to move in the direction of. And so that's my commitment, right? That's, I think, my calling.
Well, I'm perusing the site. It is impressive. I love it. I mean, I'm sitting here. I'm looking at your featured members. If I'd have had, because I had a wonderful divorce attorney. Just was not us. But he was great nonetheless, and he was recommended to me by my therapist. Now, my therapist was African American because I did the same thing when I was looking for a therapist. I wanted an African American therapist. So I ultimately did get one, and he ultimately, because I couldn't find an African American attorney, he recommended someone to me who, like I said, he was wonderful. But if I had I known about this network, or if you had somebody in New Jersey in here, I would have definitely reached out to them.
Yeah. Well, now we all know, right?
We do, because I'm looking. I see you even have Ben Crump. I see you have Benjamin Crump in here. I see you have Benjamin Crump.
Brother Ben joined in July, seeing that, hey, we're stronger together.
Absolutely. So I take my, because this really, like you said, that intentionality, this is really what it's all about. So I tell you what, God forbid I don't need an attorney for something, but if I do, matter of fact, I do need one because I need to update my will. I will definitely take a look here. Take a look here first to see if there's anyone in the area.
Yeah,
and if there's,
you know me, Mark, so you need to update your will. Let's figure this out.
All right now.
You should have told me that, because now I'm going to be on you. Like, I got somebody. And I'm a big fan of folks having choices.
Yes.
Being able to, ask different questions to the attorneys, because you want to feel comfortable and confident with whomever you're about to hire.
That is correct.
Yeah, we recognize it. It's an investment, right? It is not paying money out, because good legal service doesn't cost, it pays.
Correct.
Whether it's in preserving your legacy and estate planning, whether it's protecting your brand and business, whether it's securing your contracts. Lord Jesus, if there's anything, if you are a black business owner and you out here signing contracts and don't have an attorney reviewing them, please contact me.
I know that's right.
One of the biggest areas where we get the short end, right, is happy to have a contract, signing it, and then realizing we're getting way less than we thought.
Correct.
Right. So there's so many different ways that an attorney can be a guide. It's not always about going to court.
Right.
Most of the time it's about legal advice. Someone who's like been there, done that, and I know the law. Let me apply that to your unique situation and be able to give you advice to navigate that.
Well, I tell you, before we go, I burst out laughing whenever you were talking about the restaurant scenario about it, because I'm extremely familiar with the Jamaican culture. I mean, in all transparency, and the listeners know that my former wife was Jamaican, so that's why I am I've driven all over Jamaica, been all over the island. I know I've been to the various restaurants, and exactly what you described. I've had that experience, particularly, and I love the Caribbean soup. Oh my God, I love the Caribbean soup. So in many instances, I'll walk in, are you serving soup today? And I'll get exactly that answer you were. That's why I started laughing whenever you said that, because that experience I know extremely. You didn't make soup today, and exactly what you said. Such and such is not here. No, we didn't have this. So, oh. And then I walk out of that disappointed. So when you said that, I just started. I've been there, done that.
Yes, we all have, right? Like, there's nothing like pulling up and saying, what? And then the next time you try to, recommend it, you say, they're good, but you got to call before you go, right? And we get, sort of like, that's why you can't, but that is why you have to.
That is correct.
Yeah, that's why we have to.
And with that said, I don't give up on the restaurant because of that. Like, all right, I'll just come another time, or like you said, I'll call first or whatever. But I don't stop patronizing them, because that's back to that intentionality again. Just because they didn't have what you wanted that time, you don't just stop.
Right. And let's all be honest. Oxtails have gone up.
Right? Oh my goodness. Gone up is an understatement.
And some of that is the doing. I saw my dad sent me a video on how it's become a delicacy.
Yes.
In white establishments.
Yes.
Right? And so, whereas if you think about it, it's the cow tail.
Right.
Right. The ox's tail this is all slave food, right? That we made amazing.
Right.
That now we can't even get for the low anymore. So
I know that's right. So with that said, we are at the point now where you do get an opportunity to promote with intentionality. The only thing you can't say is a dollar amount, but anything else in terms of contact, what it's about, like you said, because any African-American lawyers I know in New Jersey, I'm going to shuttle them your way. I'm going to say, listen, I need you to reach out to this sister and get registered here. And so if I come across any, because like I said, I couldn't find them when I was looking, but for those that I do know, I will definitely pass you, your information along. But this is your opportunity to promote. The only thing you can't say is a dollar amount, but if you want to shout anybody out, you want to promote the website again and your services, your business, or anything else, I'm going to turn the mic off and you have the opportunity to do that, and we'll be finished. I do record it. It'll be on my YouTube channel, as well as I'll send you the links. I'll send you the YouTube link and the MP3 link, and you can share it however you'd like.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Mark, I just first have to give praise for your leadership and your camaraderie. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of your show this morning and connect with your listenership. I appreciate it so much. And for everyone listening today and another day, thank you for listening and leaning in and going to the website, www.justisconnection.com. That's just is, right? Just is, what is just? Just is connection.com. And take a look, right? Favorite it. Read some blogs. Read some articles on business, on family law, on car accidents, all the things. We're a legal resource. You can follow us on Instagram with the same name, as well as Facebook and LinkedIn, Justice Connection. And then for those who are interested in personalized legal assessments, I do that as well for business owners and families, which is almost like a precursor to a legal consult, to really give you a roadmap as to what are the legal issues before you and to help personalize your referrals. You can go to our Contact Us page and fill out that form, and happy to connect and support you in your journey. The law is often a part of our life journey, and it's not if, but when you're going to need some legal advice. And so at Justice Connection, we're here to serve and support.
Well, I thank you for rising early to join me and to share this information because, that last statement you just made is so true. It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. Like I said, I've had to use attorneys for divorces. I've had to use attorneys for, buying and selling houses. I've had to use attorneys for wills. So it's like you just said, it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. And then the question is, at least you have a resource here that can point you in a direction to go in terms of choosing, your attorney. Because this is the thing. Whenever all of these varies, whether it's a doctor, whether it's a therapist, whether it's an attorney, it really is a matter of choice and who you're comfortable with, because you're going to be working with some very intimate and some very personal details, and you want to be working with somebody that you feel
That's
them,
right? And they feel you.
and they feel you exactly.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you in those particular areas. You don't want it to just be cut dry business, like no feeling whatsoever. You want somebody that you're going to connect with. That's why I said I love my general physician. She's a female. I love my optometrist. They are a married couple. I'm going to be seeing them on the end of the month. Like I said, my dentist at the time, she changed her practice, and so she switched it over. So I kept the dentist she switched to. But I was very clear on my medical team being all African American. I was very clear on that, and it had nothing to do with hating white folks. Ain't nothing about that. But it is about supporting us, because in some respects, it's kind of like, well, if you're not going to support yourself, why should we support you?
That's right. That's right. And if most white people, they go to white lawyers.
Right.
Right? Nobody accuses them of hating black people. They're
Correct.
just like, no, I'm good. I'm going to go to a white lawyer.
Right.
I'm going to go to a white doctor. I'm going to go to a white business owner and eat. And it's easier for them, too, because they're the default.
Correct.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I think I bring up this book almost every week on the show with all of my guests, but it's Naeem Akbar, Breaking the Chains of Psychological Slavery. If you haven't read it, it's a wonderful book, because he gets into how we ought to, we need to be celebrating ourselves, acknowledging our greatness, because other groups see their greatness around them all the time.
Yeah.
And so there's no reason why we should not be promoting our greatness as well. And see, that's what you're doing on your site. You're promoting our greatness, because perhaps a lot of people don't even believe we can be attorneys. That's why I was asking you earlier, did you have any challenges in terms of being a black woman and looking to be an attorney? Now, I know black judges and black women, but I always kind of like, okay, what did you go through to get there? Because you had the double whammy. You had the race and the gender.
Yeah. And I think that, for those who are considering being a lawyer and maybe you don't have the encouragement of others, I will say that it is absolutely true that you can do anything, right? That you can work hard and do anything, and lean into those who are willing to support you. And for the first 5 people who don't respond or who say no, that's okay. Those weren't your people. Try 5 more. But you need a support system, right? One way or the other, a mentor, someone who says, keep going, right? I have folks who reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm not on any of the socials personally, but LinkedIn, reach out to me, Kisha, Kisha Brown. And I'm more than happy to support you in your journey, because we need you, right? And you can do it.
So, all right, folks, go to the website. I'm there. I'm still there. I just left the page up. JustisConnection.com. I always love a play on words. JUSTIS. Just is. Just like justice, but it's justisconnection.com. Go there, check out the site. If you can refer anybody there, please do so. And like she said, there's legal information and tips. Protect your family, secure your business, defend yourself, wills, trusts, and estates, civil rights violation, employee rights, divorce, elder law, contracts, negotiations, corporate LLCs, cannabis, government contracting, criminal charges, DUI, expungements, personal injury, traffic. So go to the website and you can see about all of these. Kisha, thank you so much. I will be in touch. I'll be emailing you the links. And, like I said, I need to update my will. So I'll be in touch with you about that as well.
Let's do it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Enjoy the rest of your day and weekend and week and life and everything else. But I will be in touch with you.
I love it. Thank you so much, Mark.
All right. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye now.